What's going on, YouTube? Tom here. Man, this has been a busy week still. Doesn't get any easier once you think the week is gonna be a good week. Anyway, so today I wanted to do another little let's talk about a certain vehicle, and today I thought, you know what, let's talk about the Ford GT. It's a car that some people don't like it. Apologize, my brain is absolutely fried right now. I'm just studying for another exam. So either way, the Ford GT. Let's talk about why people don't like it and the truth behind it a little bit. So first of all, people don't like it because they said, oh, it's only getting a V6. Only. And let's talk about why it has a V6. First of all, let's look at what the Ford GT is. They raced it in Le Mans, it won, it got the class win for the GT class in Le Mans, and then they turned around and they made the road car. Alright, I'm kind of a history buff. I used to love reading up on stuff, so back in the day, in a time period where only 90s kids can remember, back in the 90s, you had a lot of cars doing the same thing, where they'd build a race car and sell it as a road car to get into the loophole of Le Mans, where all you had to do was build a couple of road cars. At some point, so there's a couple of designs when they only made like one or two of the road cars. And at the time, they had loopholes where a GT car could actually be faster than a prototype to where you'd win Le Mans. And of course, everyone knows the McLaren F1. It was kind of the first car to do that, where they built the road car, then they made the GT race car, and it won Le Mans. Then they turn around with other cars like the Porsche 911 GT1, which actually is the reason why there's no GT1 version of the actual 911. It had nothing to do with the 911, but they simply designed the race car, called it a 911, it wasn't really a 911, then raced it, and of course it won. So then they made the road car after. Then Mercedes followed with the CLK GTR, and then they later did the CLR, and Nissan had one, Toyota had one. A lot of cars were like that, where they basically designed the race car first and made it a road car so it could be in Le Mans. And they called this homologation specials, where essentially it was nothing more than the car was made to homologate for Le Mans. Otherwise they never would have even done a road car. The Ford GT is kind of that same way, where Ford wanted to get into the race car business, and so it's pretty clear to me why they chose the V6 for that. First of all, you have a V6 to win Le Mans. Obviously, V8 burns gas more, and Le Mans is not a sprint type of race, it's a marathon. You can't win and be not that fuel efficient. V8s burn gas, V6 is a lot more fuel efficient. So, and obviously forced induction, the twin turbos, you get out there, you're not having to pull into the pits as much, put more distance down. And two, it was also clear, it might have been a little bit of a marketing decision too, like, okay, yeah, we need to get better gas mileage, we need to put out good power. Also, all the cars and Fords, they have the EcoBoost, so that's, even though you pay the guzzler tax on the road car GT, some people I think Doug DeMuro talked about that, even though that's the case, you still have it to where, they call it the EcoBoost, and, well, obviously they try to want you to feel like, oh, Ford GT has the EcoBoost, my Fusion has an EcoBoost, or my Focus has an EcoBoost, or F-150, etc., etc., and that's also why the Raptor, in my opinion, has the V6. Ford's trying to get it to where the EcoBoost is kind of the top tier engines in the F-150, so it's like, well, obviously you put the Raptor, the top tier F-150, you give it an EcoBoost, and all of a sudden you're saying, look, our top end performance truck, the one that's supposed to be the best, has the EcoBoost. Therefore, when you look at the standard F-150, not the Raptor version, you're like, oh, well, EcoBoost, it's clearly in the top, it must be good. So Ford has their logic behind that. Back to the GT, so like I said, it's the same idea. Also a bit of a marketing decision for Ford. And Ford GT is kind of the halo car for Ford. It's the same idea of, it's number one in the Ford fleet, kind of like the Audi R8 was, where now you're looking at that, and all of a sudden you look at Ford. Now, Ford is a bit different than Audi, of course. I know everyone's going to point that out. Yes, when I'm talking about Audi, of course what they do is the RS versions, and the S and the RS, which of course that's the performance car, and the R8 was kind of the capstone flagship S/RS version. Obviously, Ford, they're not as big into performance, but it is kind of the flagship Ford performance car, where you've got the Mustangs, the Shelby Mustang, of course, and then you've got the Focus RS, Focus ST, Fiesta ST, etc. You got all those cars. It's still the top tier in that. So then you've got some other controversial decisions. Some people were pointing out the interior. Now the Ford GT, and I say this, a lot of journalists like to say when they talk about the cars and they write about them, they say it's a race car for the street. And, I mean, they kind of always say that, always not really true in all cases. But the Ford GT, it's actually true. Like, it really is a race car for the street. You just look at the interior of it, look at that seating position. It was clear to me, anyway, when I saw some of the reviews and I saw how close you sit. Well, actually, if we take a look at the McLaren F1, it was kind of the first car to have the idea of that, where the McLaren F1 actually had the driver in the center. And the idea behind that was when you go around corners, the driver ends up being springing one way or the other. So the idea is you put the driver in the center, it makes the car fast equally around left and right hand turns, which is very important. Because if you look at Le Mans prototypes, Le Mans is primarily right hand turns, so they put the driver on the right, so when you go take a turn, you've got more weight on the right hand side of the car, which of course is physics. You take a right hand turn, the car is going to do this kind of thing, so you put weight on the right, so that way the car gets a little bit more traction. So like I said, McLaren, they put it in the center. Now, they got rid of that. You can't put a driver in the center anymore. You have to pick left or right hand drive. So Ford GT, what did they do? They sit them real close. And of course that's the case with you look at any of the prototypes. The old Ford GT, they did race it in Le Mans, and it never won, but you look at it, it wasn't specifically designed for racing as much. But, and also, you look at things like the Ford GT, the current one, where it's, instead of having the whole manual transmission, it's got the sequential dual clutch manual whatever transmission. That's a racing transmission. It's not anything to do with the, it's not made to shift gears. Le Mans, there's a reason none of them are manuals. They're always the specialized transmissions, and that's faster. So Ford GT, it is, as I've said before, it is a homologation special. It was clear that they designed the race car first. That's why they won Le Mans before it ever even went on sale, which, and the fact is that the fact they're making the 2500, it's basically what the FIA has said you have to make before you can enter the car as a GT car. So anyway, that's the way they did the Ford GT. And then other cars, they've done that in the past though, where you had the homologation specials in the 90s, where I know specifically in the case of the Nissan R395, I think it is the name of it, and then the Toyota GT1, a couple of homologation specials from the late 90s, what they did instead is they only made one car each. Nissan, they raced, but they never won. And then Toyota, that's why it was entered as Le Mans prototype in 1999. That was after the FIA stepped in and said, y'all are exploiting a loophole here. They basically told Toyota, you don't have a GT car, you have a prototype. So they let Toyota enter in as a prototype. So either way, basically it's Le Mans coming back to that. Now, will Ford GT ever get an overall win? Probably not. I don't think it's fast enough. It still has to follow into the GT rules, and the GT cars are slowed down a bit. Now, to me, this tells me, like, is Ford thinking about doing Le Mans again as like a prototype? Because Ford did win overall in the 60s. Everyone remembers the GT40. So, either way, Ford won that overall. Now, so to me, I don't know, I'd keep a lookout. Maybe Ford's working on a prototype, definitely, or they're definitely trying to up the GT to where it might actually win overall Le Mans. So, always worth watching. It's definitely the Ford GT. Now, despite everything I've said, now, I like the car, personally. I'm a big fan of it. First time I saw it, I thought, God, that's amazing looking. Ford is just making the world-class hypercar right now. It's the closest thing Ford's essentially making to it. Now, people didn't like it. And mainly the people didn't like it because of their sales reasoning. And, of course, I'll mention that real quick. I don't want to make this video too long, but the reason they did that was because it was almost Ford's way of being like, how are we going to sell this car? Because you can't do it like Ferrari. Ferrari, of course, when they sell their Halo cars, they say, well, how many people here have bought Ferraris in the past? And obviously there's, they can look and say, oh, so-and-so has bought bunch of them and they can offer it to someone high-end. Well, Ford, you can't do that because I can find you people who have bought nothing but Fords for years, and then you look at their cars, it's nothing but Focuses or something, or Foci, whatever the plural is, or F-150s, so Ford had to come up with something a little bit unique, and they wanted to, I guess Ford wanted the media attention of the car. They didn't want people to do it. And I know Rob Ferretti mentioned this in one of his videos, where they didn't want people to buy the car and kind of hoard them and flip them. They wanted Ford wanted people to drive it. And was that a mistake in a way? Kinda, because the way they went about it. So either way, like it or hate it. Now, it's a car I'd love to own, but, you know, yeah, you think I can afford that. And two, my YouTube channel, they want people to have a YouTube channel with it. I think that was the stupid part. It's like, yeah, there's people who can afford it, and there's people who would drive it and do exactly what Ford wanted, but just simply don't have a YouTube channel. Gotta open my garage door here. So, it was up for debate. I personally didn't like the system, but I don't think anyone did. It had its weaknesses. One thing I might as well just mention real fast. I don't think it was fair to compare it to the old GT. I think the problem is, the cars are not anything alike. They're only alike in name, and I think that's the inherent problem with automakers when they give a completely new design the same name as the old design, is that it ends up being that everyone unfairly compares it to the old one. Now, most cars, you're talking like Camry, where they come out with a brand new body style of Camry. Well, of course it's going to get compared, but most people aren't going to care, because they're going to be so similar. Ford GT, completely different cars, same in name only. So, to me, they honestly should come up with a new name for it. What they would have named it, yeah, that's a good question, so that's probably why they named it the GT. Anyway, once again, let me know in the comments below what you all think. Let me know what y'all think about the Ford GT. Is it a good car, bad car? If you like this video, go ahead and leave a thumbs up. If you're stopping into the channel for the first time, please subscribe. I would love to grow this channel, and have a good day.